Hello everyone and welcome to Prof Talks. Today we'll be discussing the first revision of ICHQ 9, that is Quality Risk Management, which was published in January 2023. Please note that in this presentation we'll be focusing only onto the changes in the ICHQ 9 guideline. There's one more detailed presentation onto the basics of quality risk management with a simplified example already available onto our channel. So you are advised that you should review this presentation to understand the difference and the earlier presentation to understand the concepts of QRM. Before going into the details, just a quick snapshot of the changes to this first revision. The previous version was effective since November 2005, which was a 23-page document, and the current revision was made effective on 18th January 2023, which is a 29-page document. So obviously some of the changes have been added to this current version, and specifically details have been added to clarify things across the risk management system. So what are the details added? First, that is the formality in the QRM process. There are mainly four major changes. So first is formality in the QRM process. We'll see further what formality means. Second is the risk-based decision making. Third is managing and minimizing the subjectivity. And fourth is role of QRM in addressing product availability risks arising from the quality or manufacturing issues. So we should understand that these are the only four major changes that have been introduced in Q9, the revision first. And you could remember it in any way, like from the starting words like FRSA, which is like formality, R is risk-based decision making, S is subjectivity, and A is product availability. Before moving ahead, please ensure that you have subscribed to the channel Prof Talks and have pressed the bell icon so that you can receive the notification of the upcoming presentations. Moving to the content part, the yellow highlighted part is the part that has been added into the current guideline, which has increased the number of pages. So if we can see into the risk management methodology, the point number 5.1, the point has been added, that is F, that is formality into the quality risk management process. 5.2 for R, that is risk-based decision making. 5.3, managing and minimizing the subjectivity, which we have denotized with S. And in the sixth point, integration of quality risk management into industry and regulatory operation. Point number 6.1, that is role of quality risk management in addressing product availability risks arising from quality or manufacturing issues have been added. Apart from that, if you can look into Annexure 2, that is potential applications of quality risk management process, the ninth point, that is quality risk management as a part of supply chain control, has been added into this guideline. Some specific points have been added into introduction, so we'll just look into the specific points that have been added. Subjectivity can directly impact effectiveness of QRM activities and decision made. Hence, subjectivity should be managed and minimized. So if we see what is subjectivity, subjectivity can be the understanding from person to person based on their own individual knowledge. So we'll look into detail of subjectivity when we go further into the presentation and how this subjectivity is maintained. In development and validation phase, QRM is a part of building knowledge and understanding risks, so appropriate controls can be decided during the commercial phase. And this knowledge is used to make risk-based decisions, triggering re-evaluations and simulate continual improvement. One definition has been added into this guideline for risk-based decisions, no other definition apart from this. So what is risk-based decision is a process of making decisions that considers knowledge about risks relevant to the decision and whether risks are at an acceptable level. So this is a risk-based decision. Effective and proactive QRM can enable better, more informed and timely decision throughout the product life cycle. The application of digitalization and the emerging technologies in manufacturing and control of the drug products can lead to risk reduction. So guideline acknowledges that digitalization and the new technologies can reduce the risk into the manufacturing process, but at the same time can introduce other risks that may be needed to be controlled. So QRM need to be applied during the design, validation and technology transfer of these advanced application to have appropriate controls in place, and computerized system is also important. The next point is the understanding formality lead to the efficient use of resources. So if we can define the formality to be applied to the risk management system, we can more efficiently use the resources, because lower risks will need less formality and hence will free up the resources to be focused onto more high risk areas, which can be very useful during risk based decision making, where the level of formality applied may reflect the degree and the importance of decision. So if we can see in the simple language, if the type of risk is low, so we need to be less formal in our approach for the risk assessment, and hence there's more ease of decision making, because if we go back at the time of decision making to see what kind of formality has been used. So if it is low formality, we are sure that this is a low impact area to the quality, and hence there is more ease of decision making. On the other hand, if the risk is high, so we need to be more formal and the decision need to be more informed and a more structured way. Quality risk management should not be used in a manner where decisions are made that justify an unacceptable practice. So this has been a very important area right from the beginning. However, this has been specifically added into the guideline now, that you should not justify the wrong practices that you are trying to adopt through a risk management approach. Now, if you look into the scope of this guideline remains unchanged. That is, that it is applicable to development, manufacturing, distribution, inspection, submission of the products, that is biological or medicinal products, solvents, excipients, packaging, labeling. So there's no change into the scope of this guideline. If we look into the principle specifically, there is no change into the principle. That is, risk that evaluation of risk should be based on scientific knowledge and linked to protection of patient, and the level of effort and formality should be commensurate with the level of risk. Only one note has been added into the principle section, that risk to quality includes situation where product availability may be impacted, leading to potential harm to the patient. So this point have been specifically added, that is supply chain continuity. We need to evaluate the risk available with the supply chain as well, to ensure that timely and quality product is available to the patient at the right time. The overall QRM process remains unchanged, only for the terminology change in the highlighted part under risk assessment, that is hazard identification. Initial guideline stated it as risk identification. However, the definition and the meaning of the statement remains the same. So we know that QRM process, after the initiation, there are actually 4 phases. Risk assessment, first phase; risk control is the second phase; risk review, third; and risk communication throughout the process is the fourth phase. So risk assessment includes the hazard identification, hazard analysis and hazard evaluation. The risk control includes the risk reduction and risk acceptance. Then risk review is the overall review of the events to ensure that risk is in control, and the communication takes place throughout the process. Moving to the responsibilities overall is the same, just a few minor additions here. So QRM is to be undertaken by an interdisciplinary team. That has to be clear that this is not a one-man process. This has to be, and to definitely reduce the subjectivity, there has to be a multidisciplinary team with different views coming in, so that subjectivity can be reduced and more appropriate knowledge can be applied, including experts from quality, production, engineering, regulatory affairs, sales, etc. Has been mentioned. Now, 2 more points they have added into this guideline, that is product development and supply chain. Initially, it is clearly understood that different teams include product development and supply chain as well. But in this revision, they have specifically added product development and supply chain. And next point is like decision makers should take responsibility of coordinating the QRM across various functions, ensure definition, deployment and review of QRM within adequate resources. And this point specifically has been added for the decision makers, like they should assure subjectivity is managed and minimized to ensure appropriate risk-based decision making. So decision makers, that is high level management, they has to ensure that appropriate team is put in or other appropriate measures are taken to ensure that subjectivity is controlled properly. And initiating the QRM process, as we have seen, there is no, in the last slide into the diagram, that there is no change into the initiation of the QRM process. So we'll now move to the details of the changes that we have seen, the four parts. So in methodology, the first change that we have seen into the content is related to formality. Okay. First of all, we'll see what are the tools. The tools that are defined in this guideline are unchanged. Flow charts or risk ranking filtering, fault tree analysis, preliminary hazard analysis, HACCP, FMEA, HACCP. No additional tool has been defined in this guideline. Okay. If we look the formality detail, so what do we understand by having a formality approach? If someone can say that when we say formality, risk assessment can be formal and informal, but this is not right. So it is not a binary concept. So while defining a risk assessment, we should state that there should be some less formal means and there should be some more formal means. Definitely risk assessment has to be formal, but there is a varying degree that is less formal to highly formal. And how is it impacting? Because if there's less formal, then we need to use the less formal tools. So what are less formal tools? Less formal tools like flow charts, comparison sheets, risk ranking and filtering can be used where low level of formality is applied, and low level of formality is applied where there's less impact on the quality of the product. There are some intermediate tools like fault tree analysis, preliminary hazard analysis, and HACCP. So when the risk is medium, or when so the medium level of formality can be applied, leading to the use of medium tools. But when the risk is high to the quality of the product and it is estimated that it can be highly impacting, then the approach for risk assessment has to be highly formal, and we use advanced tools, that is highly formal tools like FMEA, HACCP, etc. for carrying out the risk assessment. Okay. Now the question comes like how to determine the level of formality. Okay. So the guideline specifically has defined three criterias to determine the level of formality. First is uncertainty, that is lack of knowledge about hazard, harms and associated risks. So what tool to be used, we'll see into the next slide, but the first criteria is to use uncertainty. How much knowledge we have about that process? Are all the harms and associated risks properly visible? Second is importance. How much important the risk can be to the quality of the product. Okay. So it is based like when we take some decision whether this is going to be a highly impacting to the quality of the product or it is going to be less impacting. It is based on that. And third is complexity. Is the process or system complex or simple? Okay. So if the process is complex, definitely there will be a high level of formality needed because we don't understand the process that much. And if it is simple, a low level. So based on these three criteria, organizations are free to design a decision tree. It is highly recommended that we define into the quality system some decision tree where there are some set of pre-specified questions which can lead you to the tool to be followed. These questions can lead you that whether highly it can have options. For example, if there is a simple process, so if we can see uncertainty, importance and complexity. So if there is more uncertainty, it is more important decision and it is a complex system, so we'll need to use a highly formal tools like FMEA and HACCP, which can be driven through a decision tree. Now if we see highly formal tools, so what are the characteristics of the high formality or high formal tools is high formality levels will need highly formal tools like FMEA and HACCP. A cross-functional team is definitely needed in case where the system is uncertain, highly important and complex, which will need a facilitator as well. All parts of the quality risk assessment process like the risk assessment, risk control, risk review and risk communication are to be performed definitively. And standalone reports with unique numbering are generated as a part of the quality risk management system in the organizations. So if we can say individual reports of QRM need to be generated where highly formal tools are to be used. And to the other extreme, if there is less uncertainty, less important decision and the system is simple, so we use less formal tools like fault tree analysis, risk ranking, risk filtering. And in this case, low formality tools are used, or at all you cannot use any tool, just define it onto the basis. Cross-functional team might not always be necessary. A few individuals can group together and do it. Some parts of QRM process like the quality risk assessment, review and communication are not generally followed, and they can be they need not be done independently, and standalone reports might not be generated, but actions are documented somewhere as a part of kappa or qms into the system. The overall approach for determining how formality to apply during risk management activities should be described within the quality system, as we have seen generally through some decision tree, where it can lead to the less formal tools, medium formal tools, or highly formal tools. Resource constraints should not be used to justify the use of low levels of formality. Regardless of how much formality is applied, the robust management of risk is the goal of the QRM process. In the methodology, the second part of change R, that is risk-based decision making. Okay. So effective risk-based decision making begins with determining the level of effort, formality, and documentation that should be applied during the quality risk management process. The decision made from QRM activities include what hazard exists, risk associated with those hazards, required risk controls, acceptability of the residual risk after risk controls, communication and review of QRM activities and outputs. Decision making is based on knowledge. Refer ICH Q10 presentation into our channel for more details of how knowledge management is there. Ensure integrity of data for decision making. So whatever data we are using for making of the decision, the data integrity principles as well as good documentation practice principles should be applied to those data. Looking into the approaches for the risk-based decision making, this guideline specifically defines three approaches. First is a highly structured approach of risk-based decision making, and which can involve a formal analysis of all the available options before making a decision. It involves an in-depth consideration of the relevant factors from the options. This is used when there is a high degree of importance associated with the decision and level of uncertainty or complexity is very high. Okay. Next is a very less structured approach. This is a simpler approach and it is used to arrive at decisions, make use of the existing knowledge to support hazard analysis, risk estimation, and required risk controls. It can be used when there is a high degree of importance associated to the decision, but degree of uncertainty or complexity is lower. And third is a standardized approach or a rule-based approach, where you do not need to perform a new risk assessment to make decisions. There are well-defined SOPs, policies, which have requirements available to determine what decisions to be made in that situation. Rules may be in place when govern such decisions, whether are based on previously obtained understanding of the relevant risk, and they usually lead to a predetermined actions or expected outcomes. Moving to the third change point in the methodology S, that is subjectivity. So the guideline states that subjectivity can impact each and every stage of the QRM process, specifically the identification of hazards and estimating the occurrence, detection or severity of those hazards. It can also impact the estimation of risk reduction and effective decision making. So how can subjectivity be introduced during the QRM process? Differences in how risks are assessed and how hazards, harms and risks are perceived by different individuals. That is personal bias. This is the foremost criteria because different persons have different prospects about risk based on their previous understanding and knowledge, and hence having a cross-functional team is very important. Risk questions are inadequately defined. It is stated that if risk question is not properly defined, then definitely this will not lead to having a proper risk assessment. So risk questions need to be defined very properly and adequately to have an appropriate assessment. Tools have poorly designed risk scoring scales. So there is no proper use of tools with inappropriate scoring scales. If we can see how to reduce the subjectivity, the guideline states that it is not possible to completely eliminate the subjectivity, but yes, definitely that needs to be controlled and reduced. So addressing the bias and assumptions, how can this bias and assumptions be addressed? It can be through the use of a cross-functional team where each and every individual respects others' perspective and come to a common conclusion. Proper use of the QRM tools. So how QRM tools can be used properly is through extensive trainings of the individual on different tools like complex tools like HACCP, FMEA or HACCP, where specific people are trained and qualified onto the use of those tools and execute them properly. Maximizing the use of relevant data and source knowledge. So having an extensive background study and information on the process that need to be done for the risk assessment. And all participants involved should acknowledge, anticipate, and address the potential of subjectivity. So this should be known that subjectivity is bound to be present, but it is the responsibility of each and every individual to ensure that that subjectivity is brought down to a minimum level, to an acceptable level. The fourth revision point, that is product availability risk, was we have seen it was under the point of integrating QRM into industrial operations. So the guideline gives some examples of industrial operations where QRM is used. Earlier, in the earlier version, the examples were given as development, facility, equipment, facilities, material management, production, laboratory control, packing, and labeling control. In the revision 1, specifically one point, that is supply chain control, has been added into this guideline to ensure appropriate product availability risk is assessed. So for product availability risk, the role of QRM in addressing product availability risk arising out of the quality or manufacturing issues. These points have been specifically added into this revision. What does it states that quality or manufacturing issues including non-compliance to the GMPs are significant cause of product availability issues. Okay. Having a diverse supply chain is very important in today's world to ensure product availability, but also having this diversity includes a lot of complexity into the supply chain, which will include new risks. So application of QRM enables the proactively identification of these risks into the supply chain, which will give us an early signals and help us proactively manage the complexities that are associated with the supply chain. So pharmaceutical quality system, including management responsibilities that supports an effective oversight and response to evolving risks from the from our own company supply chain and from the external suppliers, will help to have a more proactive approach. The level of formalities definitely should be commensurate with the level of risk. So the quality and manufacturing factors that specifically apply to the supply chain and product availability, that has been defined into three categories: manufacturing process variability and state of control, manufacturing facilities and equipment, and oversight of outsourced activities and supplier. So we'll see how these three important aspects have been addressed into this guideline. The first point, that is manufacturing process variability and state of control. Processes that exhibit excessive variability have to result in unpredictable outputs and can adversely impact the product availability. QRM can help design monitoring systems capable of detecting departures from state of control and deficiencies into the manufacturing process so that they can be investigated and addresses the root cause. The next thing is the manufacturing facilities and equipment. A robust infrastructure can facilitate reliable supply, that is suitable equipment and well-designed facilities. Robustness can be affected by multiple factors like aging of the facility or insufficient maintenance or operational design vulnerable to human error. Risk to supply can be reduced by addressing these factors and use of modern technology like digitalization, automation, isolation, etc. And oversight of outsourced activities and material suppliers. It includes assuring the acceptability of supply chain partners over the product life cycle. Approval and oversight is informed by QRM, knowledge management, and effective performance monitoring. Successful partnership is strengthened by appropriate communication system and collaboration mechanism as per ICH Q10. When substantial variability is identified in quality and safety of the services or the materials provided by the external suppliers, an enhanced review and monitoring system should be implemented and justified. In some cases, it may be necessary to identify a new supply chain entity to perform the overall function if the risk is to be managed appropriately. As we have seen in the content, there has been addition into the Annex 2 specifically related to the product availability part, potential application of QRM. So QRM as a part of supply chain, here it defines again how QRM is used in the three factors that we have seen into the previous slide, that is manufacturing process variability and state of control. So how QRM can be used is to decrease variability in the manufacturing process and capability gaps, to design monitoring systems capable of detecting departures from the state of control, for manufacturing facilities and equipment to ensure facility and equipment are suitable and designed for robust manufacturing, is to establish a robust facility and equipment maintenance program to ensure operational design of equipment is not vulnerable to human error, to obtain quality and efficiency gains through utilization of digitalization, automation, isolation technologies and innovations, and for the oversight of outsourced and material suppliers to enhance review and monitoring when substantial variability is identified in the quality and safety, to manage external product variability risks properly. And the final part of this guideline, that is the references. Specifically, 3 references have been added. ICHQ10, that is the pharmaceutical quality system. So this is again a very important guideline, and we have a very detailed presentation available into the channel. You can visit it and have a review of the ICHQ10 presentation. The second reference that has been added is ICHQ11, that is development and manufacturing of drug substance. So this will shortly come up with a presentation on ICHQ11. And third is the ICHQ12, that is technical and regulatory consideration of pharmaceutical product lifecycle management. So this presentation ICHQ12 is also available onto our channel. You can visit it and have a review of this presentation as well. With this, we come to the end of this presentation. Hope you have liked this presentation. Kindly subscribe to the channel Prof Talks to get more information onto the pharmaceutical quality system. Thank you.